Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Football World Championship, home to the industry's most accurate rankings.
Welcome, fantasy football fans, to the Full-Time Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Adam Krautwurst, and with me is Mr. Full-Time himself, Jody Smith, joining us today. Sean Childs joining us as well to do some projections and go through some numbers here. And we're going to be doing this every single week until we're done with these divisions. And Sean is the brainchild behind the analytics, which powers the Full-Time Fantasy projections. So I'm super excited to talk to him. And Jody is our award-winning FSGA ranker over here at Full-Time Fantasy. And listen, I was at the FSGA last week or over the weekend, and it was fantastic time meeting everybody and getting and making memories, making stories, meeting and greeting. Expo's coming up. Jody, are you excited for the Expo?
Oh yeah, I heard some feedback. I heard you represented the brand really well there in Ohio, Adam. So great,
beautiful,
great job. I'll be over there to undo all your handiwork here in what a little bit less than 2 months. I'm getting excited about it. Even I heard that they managed to RSVP out an entire karaoke pub for those of us to stay for Sunday night. So I'm sure we won't be able to talk about that on the podcast because it sounds like it's going to be some trouble. No.
Sean, are you a big karaoke guy?
Never experienced. I know probably one song. Paul Revere. That's it.
Paul Revere.
That's my range.
Yeah, Sean not being a karaoke guy, that was like minus 900 on the board.
That's minus 9. That wasn't even a bet. You couldn't even pick that.
Yeah, you couldn't even pick it
in some states. But awesome. So yeah, I'm excited for the show tonight. Hey, we got another promo tonight for you guys. If you type put me in coach into the YouTube chat here, we will put you in a drawing for tonight for a $50 Superflex Bowl draft tonight. I might even pop into that. I think I'm in like every one so far. I probably should not get in every single one.
Sean, you said Superflex Bowl. Scott mentioned something, but are you a bowler?
Yeah, I can actually
you're
bowl.
A legit bowler.
I can bowl lefty and righty and probably average 210 on either hand, but they're the lanes are a lot easier than they used to be. I peaked in 1983-84.
I was born in 84, but we won't go there. We won't go there. All right, awesome. So tonight's show again, AFC East projections. We're going to talk through some of Sean's stuff, some of Jody's stuff, and I'm really just going to facilitate here because I love learning the analytics and all this stuff from you guys. So we'll start with the Dolphins here, Sean. Let's start with the quarterback position. Tua. Hey, if he stays healthy for 17 games, are you high on Tua? What do your numbers say?
Tua is an interesting player. I was really high on Tua last year, and I was kind of right about what he was going to do. But man, those concussions really kind of really scare me. And he's going to get drafted higher this year. He's obviously got two dynamic receivers. The running game it doesn't produce much, and they flipped the tight end position, and maybe the rookie can add a little bit. But it's pretty a two-trick pony there, and then maybe the chosen Anderson can chip in. But Tua, 3,800 yards, 26 touchdowns. I got him, missing, 20% of the season. So, I mean, that's kind of a challenge here when you're doing projections. Do you put it in for injuries or, their best outlook ever, or, so in his case, he's missed time. I can't give him the full outlook. If it was, he would obviously, gain, at least 15% back on top of that. So the potential is there for sure.
Jody, thoughts on Tua?
Yeah, I agree. On a per game basis, if we knew he was going to be healthy, he's right up there in the QB1 argument. My projections, what Sean just stated is really difficult for people like us that write projections, because you go into things and you don't want to project injuries because, you just can't do that. But there's certain players that have so much potential to get hurt baked into their ADP and into their history. Some guys just, Lamar Jackson hasn't played, a full slot of games, I don't think, since 2018. So it's really hard to project them out. But, that's what we kind of have to do. Like I said, on a per game basis, he has that QB1 potential if he stays healthy. If we knew he was going to stay healthy, I think Tua would be right there around, QB10 to QB12 range. But you do have to factor that in. And, more disconcerting, what you feel like is if he gets any concussion, you feel like, you worry about his health in general, and that it could be, very lengthy time sidelined. So, again, he stays healthy. He's a guy you really want, but you have to bake that into his cost. Overall, I like taking some shots at him. Preferably, as a streamer, a QB2 type, but just depends on the format.
Yeah, I'm completely off Tua in Dynasty because of the injuries. Redraft. I haven't really drafted him either. And again, just to remind people, projections are not rankings, right? Like you can't project certain play. Like you can't project. This might be a bad example, like Mike White for anything great, but he might rank a little bit higher than his projections because, hey, if Tua goes down, you got Mike White in an explosive offense. So he might be a super flex late round fly or something like that, or even like a Tua handcuff if you want to draft that many QBs. So rankings are not projections, and that's kind of what I like to remind people. But yeah, the injuries are the biggest concern with Tua. So moving on to the running backs here, you have Jeff Wilson down for 40% of the rushing attempts. He's your guy in Miami this year.
Yeah, based on Mostert had played really, really well last year, but he has a little bit of injury history. Mostert really kind of came on, but those two, they kind of flipped from San Francisco in a rushing offense. Neither one of them really catches a ton of balls. But that offense was productive last year, and I don't have them projected for a ton of rushes for the whole team. 405, with a third running back, maybe getting 60 carries, but that will fluctuate, as the season goes on. But Mostert's somebody that that has history of injuries, and he's come off a great season. He's going to get drafted higher this year, and he's kind of a guy that made it through. I would probably kind of fade, and which player has the highest ceiling, and then Wilson probably sits on top right now.
Jody, are you worried about A-Chain kind of working into that a little bit with the draft capital and how explosive he is and that speed in this Dolphins offense?
I kind of hope he does. I'm probably a little bit higher on him because he just has that upside. I will say that in Shawn's projections, he did have A-Chain leading the group in yards per carry, and I believe you had him leading in yards per catch too. So you're factoring in that explosive upside potential he has, and you feel like if the way it plays out, and again, Raheem Mostert just can ever stay healthy. You feel like he's the kind of kid, if he gets in there, it's possible that he actually starts to become a real factor and plays his way into it. But I agree with Shawn in the sense of this is probably going to be a pretty confusing backfield to play with all week. 1 week that may be Wilson, the next week could be Mostert. Each game they could fluctuate touches from 10 to 12 apiece, and again, they come in almost back to back in my personal projections, where I have Wilson at RB 39 and Mostert is like 41, something along that. A-Chain is not too far after there, but it's a productive fantasy backfield, but it's one that's kind of nightmarish from a fantasy perspective because it's just hard to project. If we thought one guy was going to step up, which they were likely to do in San Francisco, but it took the other one being out for that to happen. All of a sudden, you're talking about a potential weekly RB2. But until that happens, you want to take, I think, if you're doing multiple drafts, you want some. I think you want to split your diversity with both of them, take some shots here and there. But I agree with Shawn. All things being said, I think Wilson's the guy to have, and my second favorite would be, taking a much later shot on A-Chain.
Yeah, I think A-Chain might be going around the same time as these guys, maybe even a little bit before. They're all kind of going in the same.
Yeah, I imagine that's what we talked about the last time we got a show. That's Dynasty Zealots right now running up the ADP. I think in time you'll see that probably even out a little bit, but depends on what we see in camp. We see some exciting highlight reel plays. That's all it takes, and everything can flip.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, you have a better chance of Shawn singing karaoke at the Expo than you do of getting 17 games out of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. So I think I like A-Chain there too, because he's going to get that opportunity to be at least the RB2 there. Moving on to the receivers. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better receiving core than what the Dolphins have. Not super deep, as Chosen Anderson, Cedric Wilson, and Braxton Berrios are like 3, 4, 5. But man, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, superstar type receivers. Talk to us about how you projected those guys, Shawn.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill's coming off. I think he was the second highest scoring receiver last year. Been really dynamic. It was surprising that he was able to hold value in Miami. Only thing he really didn't do was score the touchdowns, and he really kind of connected with Tua. And that's really kind of, Hill is the key to the offense. If he's playing well and doing stuff, he sets up Tua. And then Waddle, is another explosive player that, kind of actually at part of last season kind of underachieved what you thought he might do. But between the two of them, they're going to catch a ton of balls. They're going to score some touchdowns. They're going to make some big plays. But, like we talked about Tua earlier, it's the key for him reaching like that higher status. He needs either a tight end or a third receiver or, the running backs to get more catches. And I'm just not seeing that whole package there. Maybe the Chosen with the change of name will, get back to maybe a 50, 60 catch guy. But for now, I haven't projected lower than that.
Robbie, the Chosen Anderson. Jody, what do you think of these Dolphins receivers, Tyreek or Waddle? Or hey, maybe not Tyreek after he may have put hands on somebody at a boat marina recently, according to TMZ.
And it's not the first, it's not even the second time we've seen Tyreek, have a little brush with the law. So it's obviously a concern. I got to say, with Jalen Waddle, I missed on him last year. I thought with Tyreek Hill coming in and taking out that deep factor that Jalen Waddle would lose a lot of his targets and would be mostly short. Instead, we saw Jalen Waddle be utilized much further downfield in the second year than we saw during his rookie year. So overall, like Jalen Waddle had a 21% target share last year. My raw numbers it's the exact same target share. I expect Tyreek's 31% target share to actually fall a little bit. But that said, I don't have a ton of confidence in any of the players on the Dolphins to emerge. You look at last year, Mike Gesicki only had a 9.7% target share. I don't see a lot of changing. To me, Chosen Anderson, it has throughout his career been utilized as a deep threat, and it feels like what Miami has now already is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who are very good in that role. So what they need is a guy closer to the line of scrimmage to use in the intermediate and closer to the 10 yards area. I don't know that Braxton Berrios can be that guy. I mean, optimistically, if you give Braxton Berrios, say, a 10% target share, which is approximately what their number 3 receiver had last season, you're getting up to only, 55 to 60 targets. And, at that point, not really fantasy relevant. So, it just starts with Hill and Waddle, and you can take some shots on these ancillary receivers a little bit later in your draft. But to me, with the way the Miami offense ran out last year, I don't see why that would change it. Your running backs are likely to see, as a group, more is likely to be, the third most targeted spot in this offense. And, I don't see a lot of any upside with the tight end. So I feel like, the guys are basically free at the end of drafts. You can take some shots on Cedric Wilson and Braxton Berrios and whatnot, but there's not a lot of upside there.
Can I talk?
Absolutely.
When you talk about target share, it's kind of interesting is when I'm doing the projections, I don't use targets as a factor. I use completions because I think like each team, say the baseline of the running backs catch 20% of the completions by the team, the wide receivers 60, and say the tight ends 20 on the average. So each team is going to have a different piece, and I can see the last 3-year averages. But when you have Waddle, making bigger plays last year, his catch rate might go down from 68% to 62%. So the target share and the catch percentage is a factor, and I kind of eliminate that when I do the projections by using the catch percentage, which is kind of a different than most people talk about, kind of a different way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I like thinking outside the box for sure, and that's what we're talking about over here at Full Time Fantasy. That's where we give you the best projections. Sean's bringing to you. We're not going to spend 1 second on Elijah Higgins or Durham Smythe because do not draft the Miami.
I kind of like Higgins as a tight end premium dynasty pick, but because he's basically free. But again, like I just said, there's not a lot of upside, this season in any of that group. But Higgins is interesting. Dynasty.
Does he qualify at tight end in your format?
I don't even know.
Yeah, he has been.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because he's interesting if he plays wide receiver 3,
Even better.
and then he qualifies at tight end, because he's really a kind of a wide receiver, a big wide receiver. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of sneaky if he does, either way, that he could be the third option over Anderson.
True. I mean, I've loved Anderson for a while, but he's just gotta. I think it's over for him. But yeah. Speaking of the statistics and analytics, like all this stuff is premium type stuff, guys, that we're bringing to you on the YouTube channel, the Full Time Fantasy Podcast. All this information is behind the paywall. So when you watch our show, subscribe to the channel, like the stuff, because we're going to be coming to you guys every single week with a new division every week. So Shawn's bringing the good stuff over here, and Jody's always with me. So off to the Bills. I got my Josh Allen Bills jersey on here for the AFC East tonight. Anything new, Shawn, for Josh Allen? He should have been QB1 for the third year in a row if it wasn't for them missing the Bills-Bengals game at the end of the year, which would have been historic. 3 straight seasons. Only Dante Culpepper and Favre have done that, I think. So I'd like to say that he did do it, points per game. But what do you have for him for this 4th year in a row?
Yeah, he's got pretty much, I got him almost 5,500 combined yards, which is a massive number. 44 touchdowns. I mean, there's a big number, and he's going to project well. I mean, probably the best thing that probably people aren't thinking about, but when I went through the Buffalo's defense, I thought there was a little more risk there, and they could have some regression, which is a win for Allen. A lot more high scoring games and stuff like that. So, I'm not going to go through the defensive players, but he gets a little bump with the second tight end there. That's good for him. He needs somebody else to step up wide receiver 3. Not sure anybody will emerge to be impactful running back catches, but he'll spread it around enough, and he's got 2 pretty good receivers at the front end, and his ability to run really is a separator from most quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, Jody, you got Allen up at the top of the league, right?
Of course. Yeah, I like that Shawn mentioned his total yards out, but I just crunched mine together real quick on the calculator, came up with 5,058 yards. So yeah, I have him, throwing for 4,354 yards and running for an additional 700. The only drawback that I see with Josh Allen, and again, I still have him as QB2. It's just an issue, it becomes, you can argue, I think, with the top 3 quarterback tiers, you can argue them in any order, but typically you're going to see either Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes as your QB1, which is right. The only negative that I come up with is, and that's great because this is going to be our next talking point, is did they sign Damian Harris to kind of, prevent Josh Allen from getting those gimme goal line runs and to take some of the punishment off of him? Now, Josh Allen's been a great runner. It's been very durable, and he's been very effective, which, again, you can't ask for more. But, at one point, do they decide, all right, let's take some of this unnecessary punishment away from him? And, Shawn, I looked at your numbers for Damian Harris, and I think you're pretty high on him, which I am too. I had him at I believe he's at 4.4 yards per carry last year. I see personally, I'm looking at the Bills kind of using the same sort of breakdown they had last year, where Damian Harris is much better in pass protection than James Cooks was. He's a very effective red zone option, as we saw dating back 2 seasons ago. He had 15 touchdowns. I think that was a league leading total. And even last year, he had just as many red zone yards and like half the number of carries that Rhamondre Stevenson had. And he had the same number of red zone touchdowns at 3. So I really think he's effective in that role. So I wanted to ask you, Shawn, looking at your projections, what are you thinking for Harris? And for
I think that they're not going to, Allen's the key to the team, and if he wants to run the ball, he's going to run the ball, and he's going to do his stuff, and he's not suddenly going to be Hurts and score, 13, 14 touchdowns, but he's going to get his chance. He's going to score touchdowns. Damian Harris is a pretty good runner inside. He's going to probably get his chances, and maybe Buffalo has a little more upside scoring in close on the ground. And, if they play from the lead in the second half, that's what probably Harris will probably help them move the chains as well. So, pretty good player for New England, doesn't get a lot of catches. Like you said, I had him, 42% of the rushes, 191 carries. 800 yards, 150 yards, and 9 touchdowns and 15 catches.
Yep.
And, Cooks is probably a more explosive player and make big plays, but he didn't show enough last year. Like you said, the pass projection's a concern. And, but he looks like he's going to be the guy that probably gets a little more catches for sure. So, but, those two are definitely make a pretty good combo, especially if Buffalo's clicking on offense this year.
I think right now for your raw numbers at 9 touchdowns, like I have him at 8 total touchdowns with 7 rushing, which to me is a pretty healthy figure. And so that drops in my numbers. It dropped Josh Allen down to like 6.2 rushing touchdowns, which is still, could easily be among the top 2 for quarterback, but it feels like Harris is an extremely good value. Both of us are just between the two of us. So he's averaging 8 rushing touchdowns between the two of us. I mean, you consider kind of how late he's being drafted. I get the, I get the appeal for James Cook. He ran a route 86% of his routes last year. Like I said, the pass protection, he was only in on like 10% of passing reps. His pass blocking was just so bad, but second in the NFL at a 44% breakaway rate there. So, I don't know that they're going to want to all of a sudden give him, 175 carries. I think he was pretty effective in that role. He probably will see an increase in target share. Damian Harris, I think, kind of showed a little bit as a receiver last year. A lot of times we get in the habit of saying players can't do something just because they weren't asked to do it in college. Leonard Fournette was a great example. I don't think he caught a lot of balls at college, and all of a sudden he comes in, he becomes like, a very heavily targeted volume back in the NFL. So, I think I like James Cook in that third down type role. He will obviously see an increase in overall usage and all that, but it feels like I won't be surprised to see Damian Harris kind of put up similar numbers to what Devin Singletary has done. Maybe a few less receptions, but maybe a few more goal line and first down, short yardage attempts. So I mean, I think he's a really nice value.
Another point, kind of on the other thing. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, do it.
When you make the first run of the projections, you got these massive numbers and these people projected. But I have a checkpoint when I finish that, based on last year, the year before, how many rushing touchdowns were scored. I mean, in 2020, there was 532 rushing touchdowns, most ever in the NFL, and probably helped because of the replays and the balls being down at the 1 or 2 yard line. The next year was 505. There was 487, but earlier in, the first 5 years I had from 2010 to 2013, it was 399, 400, 401, 410. It was such a tight range. So, you have a reference point of what has happened in the past. So right now, as I'm calculating the stuff, all the running backs that I have calculated, I still have like 7 teams to go. They're gaining 4.39 yards per rush. Last year was 4.46, which was more of a result of the growth of the running quarterbacks in the quarterback position, I think. Almost identical rushes. There was 14,770. I have 14,704, but still, like I said, the end's not done yet. And I'm way over projected for touchdowns. I'm at 540. Last year was 587, but does it get closer to the 532 from a couple years ago? So I will probably get it closer to the 500 range. So I have to peel those out, but I'm also putting in some bad numbers for 6 teams, 7 teams that are, that I haven't adjusted from last year as well. So, and the same thing happens on the passing side. So that's just like I said, a reference point when you're going through them. They may feel like they're hot and high, but when I go through all the teams, I'll double back, check it to try to get to where it was and then go from there.
It's great for you to like peel the curtain back and let people know that don't do projections. Like what a labor of love it is, like to see, like it's awesome, Shawn, that you can just reference these history numbers on the same way. Cause it's like when you just do raw numbers and it's something's way off and you just kind of beat yourself up like, man, how could I be so off? And then you have to go back and you start tweaking one player. And the next thing you know, you've had to go back and tweak pretty much every team. But I love doing it. I know you do too, and you've been awesome at it and been doing it for a long, long time. So it's just great to kind of have another veteran come back and talk about some of the things that factor in that people that don't do it don't take into consideration.
Guys, I'm sitting right here. Okay. I know I don't do projections. Okay. You don't got to rub it. You got to rub it.
You're smart though, Adam. You just get the benefit of all.
That's right. I know who to trust. And I know you two guys are two I can trust. So real quick, being the Bills fanatic that I am, I don't have all the numbers that you guys have down, but I know that Josh Allen has put on weight. He's been in the weight room here. He's looking jacked up. He's ready. He's ready to go. He sees Jalen Hurts scoring all these 1-inch touchdowns. He's like, yo, I could do that in my sleep. So I would like the over on Josh Allen rushing touchdowns. Also, James Cook, I think he averaged over 5 yards a carry last year. I would be shocked if Cook doesn't average. I would be shocked if he doesn't average more yards per carry than Damian Harris does. Not that you get fantasy points really for yards per carry, but just for the projections, I kind of like Cook there. But moving on to the receivers, Diggs is obviously a stud there. And I know you like him, Shawn, in your projections, but is Gabe Davis, is he going to have a bounce back year this year? How do you see that happening?
Boy, he was such a trap last year, and everybody thinking he was going to be a wide receiver too, really hot, coming and moving up the things. And you know what? He just doesn't have the whole package based on, he's entering and he could be better. He looks good. He can score in close, and look for him, score some touchdowns. He can make some big plays, but those in between, volume plays to get him up to 80 catches, he just didn't have them, and he didn't get enough targets. So I didn't take him, further as a progression year. I left him more neutral what he did. And he just, I'm not convinced. And then Allen was willing to spread the ball around to his other receivers. So he definitely could. I would not take him anywhere close to where he was getting drafted last year. But if he's, falls far enough, a wide receiver 3, back end, explosive player that can have some big games, that's a different story. I mean, ideally, if you go wide receiver strong and he's your 4th wide receiver, it kind of makes sense. But he did not get it done for me. And I liked him a lot last year. And probably got saved by some people taking him earlier than me as well.
Yeah, he was going last year in the 3rd, 4th round. This year he's going nowhere near that. You'd be able to get him in the 8th round, 9th round sometimes in some of these drafts. So I think the price is kind of baked in there. I noticed you have Khalil Shakir for more catches this year than Gabe Davis. So that's going to be an interesting receiving core to keep an eye on. I do think you're right. They do like to spread the ball around there. Anything to add to the receivers, Jody?
Great. Gabe Davis last year was Shawn said it perfectly. He was one of the biggest traps out there. Like I didn't want nothing to do with him. It was recency bias was driving up that ridiculous ADP. And I think his ADP now is a little more in line with it. But I personally, his lack of consistency is something that he's somebody you kind of want to target in best ball. If he finally slips down to where you said, Adam, to the 8th or 9th or 10th round, he's going to have some big games. He's going to have those, a handful of long touchdowns, maybe even a couple of multi-score games. But there's also going to be some clunkers in there, and we saw that. Interesting. You mentioned that Shakir, that Shawn's projections are pretty high on Shakir. Obviously, you feel like 61% slot rate last year was pretty good, except the spot vacated by Isaiah McKenzie opens up nicely for that. I'm kind of interested to see. My expectations are that the Bills are going to run a lot more 12 sets, here with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, Dalton and Dawson. That sounds like a law firm. Knox, a 47% slot rate last year was pretty interesting for a tight end. It was pretty high, but I'm expecting Kincaid, to be probably north of 50% this year. We're already seeing him in OTAs or in the slots and running those routes. And maybe Dawson Knox runs more inline sets. I don't know. We'll see. But, we also have Singletary's 53 targets last year, which are now available. So we'll see how many of those go to James Cook, or possibly they do go to Khalil Shakir and both these tight ends. And it'll be really interesting, I think, here in July to see Dalton Kincaid's the guy I'm interested in seeing, because obviously, like right now, his rookie ADP is shot up into the 1st round. At the last time we updated this week, I just updated those yesterday. The FFWC rookie dynasty picks, and Dalton Knox, Kincaid is now going in round 1. So really interesting. What we'll be watching here, and especially you, Adam, with it being your squad down up there.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the ADP visual board over here and right now at full time on the Fantasy Football World Championships. You got Gabe Davis as wide receiver 43, going with the first pick in the 8th round. So, Dalton Kincaid's going around tight end 14 or 15. So I think that's pretty good. How do you? I think he's going to be a big slot here in Buffalo. They're calling him Swole Beasley over here in Buffalo. So we'll see how that goes. Shawn, did you project him? Did you kind of factor some of that in with your projections when you were doing that? Like, is he going to play a little bit of slot receiver for the Bills?
Last year, the Bills receivers caught 62% of the completions. I dropped them down to 50%, because of the wide receiver 3 a little bit, and their tight ends were 16%, and I bumped them to 22%. So I was, pretty confident that the tight end position was going to be pretty active. I liked Kincaid a lot. Thought it'd be really kind of the closing piece to that team. Maybe help late in the year, and Dawson, does enough, and he has chemistry with Allen. But Kincaid's kind of the key guy, and but can you draft him and be if he's a 14 receiver and a tight end and he cheat, and can he be a starter out of the gate? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, he could definitely be a second half of this season guy. I mean, the Bills need receivers. It's not like they're loaded like the Bengals or the Eagles or teams like that. Like, they need someone to step up. So I think
they need Travis Kelce.
They need listen, they're saying they're not saying he's Travis Kelce, but he looks like Kelce when he's out there running around. He's more of a receiver. So
no, but that's what I was getting at. But he fits what they need.
Yeah,
they're saying they're tired of getting beat by him, so they got their own little weapon over there. We'll see.
Right. Good stuff. So just remind everyone, put me in, coach, into the chat, and we'll get you in here for a free Super Flex Bowl ticket tonight. So I think we're good with the Bills there. Really good stuff, guys. We'll move on to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers in town. How did when you have a Super Bowl winning elite franchise Hall of Fame quarterback coming in, following up Zach Wilson, do you kind of throw the projections out or the pass rate out from the year before? Like, how do you got to start from scratch, Shawn?
Yeah, it's going to, ultimately, the second checkpoint I have is when you're, for any quarterback, for like Rodgers, in his career, he's basically been about a league average pass attempts, 35 a game or something like that, and had some, not many times over 600. So, the passing attempts, I can kind of go to the Jets, better receivers, change an offense that he's going to get more chances. So I can factor that in, and then but his receivers, will Garrett Wilson gain big yards per catch? So whatever his receivers I give per catch, it will show on the top of the screen. And when everybody sees the projections that you have, you'll see New York passing, yards of 48-64, and then you'll see Aaron Rodgers 47-31. Well, the top number is actually from the receivers. So, and I have, so I have to back that out and match whatever I think the receivers are. I have to match his yards per pass attempt, what I think, to those two numbers to make it fit in the box. So that's kind of a checkpoint for me too. So if I can dictate the number of throws, but his wide receiver core has to be able to deliver a certain amount of yards. And so that's how I kind of come up with that. And then, then some of them I look at, he gained 14.4 last year. He's going to get better or worse. What is his career average? And you kind of ballparking that, and you don't have to get it exact, but you're trying to put it in ranges of, change of quarterback, change and stuff like that, so Rodgers is, I think he gets a really good chance to throw the ball more than he has in the past. Will he get like a Tom Brady and, well over 600? I'm not sure, and I didn't give him that, but he'll be fun to watch for sure in New York.
So do you like him more, real quick, Shawn, do you like him more in New York this year than maybe the last few years in Green Bay, or the same or less?
It's kind of interesting because I guess Lazard, to me, I was never a big Lazard guy. Decent player, and he does stuff, and he brought him for the ride, and he's got Cobb and, not much. So his Wilson is kind of the driving force, and his tight ends aren't great. So I guess the ultimate thing is, can he squeeze something out of Corey Davis and him be a better player? And will the running back position catch enough balls to support as many throws as he has? So I think the yards will be more because he's going to throw more touchdowns, close to 2 a game. But that lot, when you see how they kind of play it out the summer and the coach speak, he could get a little bit more. So I think he'll be better than last year for sure.
Yeah, no, I like him too. Jody, how do you feel on him? What do your numbers say?
I'm a little more skeptical on Aaron Rodgers. I'm kind of factoring in things that other people really haven't. You look at a guy that's 39, and that's not too ancient, as a quarterback in these days, but he's been on a general 3-year decline in completion rates and touchdowns and adjusted yards per attempt. And there's other metrics that are kind of telling of a player that is in decline. Now, again, not unusual for a player who's close to 40 years old. But another thing that people aren't factoring in is, Aaron Rodgers, he's come up, he went from a media situation where they're almost is non-existent. They don't have issues. And now he's going to New York. And this guy he's been a little surly. He's become increasingly unlikable in my opinion over the years, and just the way he it's just real sarcastic and likes to troll and all that. It just feels like that kind of combative nature with New York media could develop into some issues. I don't know. That kind of stuff can get into your head and like I said, can just cause problems overall. I mean, maybe it was the coaching staff. Maybe he's just been unhappy with ownership, and maybe he goes in there with an FU attitude, wants to say, hey, you know what? Y'all let me walk. Now watch this. I think both of those are within the realm of possibilities. If you told me at the end of the year, Aaron Rodgers turned back the clock and put up QB5 numbers, I could buy it. But also, Aaron Rodgers bombed. He really showed his age, and yet another epic fail for the Jets, and he finished as sorry, Scott. And he finished as a QB 21. To me, those are the possibilities. So I have him as an upper QB 2. He'll probably come out between, say, QB 13 and 16, which is, I think, pretty normal. But my raw numbers, I have him just under 4,000 yards. I have him at 32 total touchdowns. So still, a guy that can be very usable week to week fantasy quarterback. And again, we all love some of the young supporting options around him here in the Jets that we're fixing to dive into.
Yeah, for sure. Breece Hall, a guy that I loved going into last year. And I had 2 or 3 Cooper Kupp Breece Hall teams in the FFWC main event that were just poised.
Yeah, so you're looking good from weeks 1 through 6 or so, weren't you?
Ready to make money. And it just it didn't happen, obviously. But Breece Hall's going in the 3rd round of the FTFC Mid-Stakes Championship over at Full Time. I really love him. I'm not afraid of the ACL. Coaches say he's ahead of schedule. He says he's ahead of schedule. Doctor says he's ahead of schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and draft based off of that. Shawn, what do your projections say about Breece Hall this year?
Oh, in the first run of it, it's a little more conservative. Coming off the injury, didn't really feel as though I gave him the whole show in September, and and I'll adjust that when it comes over. But 55% of the carries, 300 touches, 60 catches, 1,600 yards. I'm pretty aggressive there, and I didn't give him the full show. Touchdowns, a dozen. Rodgers, had a pretty good running back with Aaron Jones getting passed on the ball, and I think he'll, show that he's a special player in that area as well, and he'll get the bulk of carries on, early downs. And I split up between the second and third backs, 148 carries, which a lot of those could go back to the, to Breece Hall. So there's room for higher projections, but I was still pretty bullish considering I tapered down his early carries and stuff like that. So,
Jody, what do you think?
I'm much more conservative on Breece Hall. I love that the coaches and everything that the players themselves are saying is more optimistic. There was an article that recently came out from The Athletic that said they were a little more skeptical of his ability to be ready in time. There's a long history of running backs kind of struggling in that first year back from ACL injury. Yes, there are outliers like Adrian Peterson, as we know, famously rushed for 2,000 yards coming off. We've seen other backs be successful, but we also saw last year J.K. Dobbins started off very slow as they kind of nursed him back into health. I feel like the Jets right now with Aaron Rodgers, they can afford to let Breece Hall kind of slowly, take the field. They've got very competent backs in Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight, and they just used draft pick on Israel Abedakanda. They've got all these, options. They don't necessarily have to rush him out there. I love the upside. He was absolutely tremendous when he played last year. And if you're telling me that I can have 90% of Breece Hall, well then, he's the guy that I'm obviously considering as a very strong RB1. But I'm just being a little, cautious right now. It'll be telling. We'll see in July, August if they let him touch the ball at all in the preseason, which I don't expect they will. But if they do, if we're seeing him making cuts and looking strong on practice on the sidelines and whatnot, then, that'll be very, that'll be very telling for that they feel as confident as they're saying they are now. And he's a guy that will probably skyrocket back up my personal projections.
Yeah, Breece Hall is a guy I'm targeting now. While not everyone's drafting now. August is when a lot of the normal people start to draft, and I think he'll start to creep up because the news will be good. So I'm trying to get a lot of my Breece Hall shares in now. I mean, his profile, he profiles as like if he didn't have an injury last year, he'd be probably the sixth pick overall in the draft.
He's RB1.
Yeah, RB1 type stuff. So I'm all in on Breece Hall. I love him this year, especially in the third round. Another guy that I'm all in on, wide receiver Garrett Wilson. I see here, Shawn, you got him down for 96 catches, 1,321 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Those are wide receiver 1 numbers. But I will say he might have 9 touchdowns from the 1-yard line. The way that he's running that fade route with Rodgers, loves that fade with Davante Adams. And even Anthony said it in the chat that, Garrett Wilson can be Davante Adams. Garrett Wilson had a higher draft capital than Davante Adams. He's a better player in college, better player coming out. I mean, better rookie year with one of the worst quarterbacks you've ever seen in Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson, I think, has the potential. And Jody, you and I talked about this during kind of when you were doing your rankings process, and I'm even higher on him now. He's got a super high ceiling. So what do you think about Garrett Wilson, Shawn?
The only thing he might not have better than Adams is hands. So because Adams is great
he needs those.
When he gets his hands on the ball, he catches the ball. But Wilson, like you said, you're basically, when you're seeing Aaron Rodgers go here and he's got a young dynamic receiver, he's Adams, but I can't give him the whole show of Adams, and maybe he catches 110 passes because maybe the second and third receiver don't do as much, but the potential's there. He's younger, he's probably more explosive where he can take a shorter pass and make big plays. It was kind of interesting to see Adams go to the Raiders and actually make more big plays than we thought, and not with Rodgers. But Rodgers throws the ball. He's the slickest quarterback in the league. He throws it on time. He's going to get it to this guy in a good position to catch the ball. He's going to make a lot of plays, and he's going to be a really, really exciting receiver. And he was dynamic last year with you, me, and Jody throwing the ball. So we'll see.
Listen, those who know me know I'm a pretty good flag football quarterback. I'm waiting to get asked to play at the Expo. We'll see. We'll see if that ever happens. But Jody, are you as high as I am on Garrett Wilson? Because I just can't, people don't, you see these videos in the preseason, like I saw a video on Twitter the other day of Aaron Rodgers working one-on-one with Garrett Wilson on the fade route from the 1-yard line. Like, oh, that's what all quarterbacks receivers do. No, it's not. Josh Allen couldn't even get Kelvin Benjamin, his number 1 receiver, to play catch with him before the game. Okay, so that's not how every quarterback receiver relationship is. It's great to see them do that together. What do you think?
I'm just kind of smiling because just a minute ago you mentioned Shawn's raw projections for Garrett Wilson, and I pulled mine up. I'm just laughing because I have him at 159 targets, which you didn't discuss, but I had 96 catches, which I think is the exact same number, 1,325 yards, and 8.9 touchdowns.
4 yards.
4
yards and 0.1 touchdowns.
Again, you get projections, people. We're looking at the same things. We just approach things, slightly differently and all that. So while I'm a little on the fence of Aaron Rodgers, I do believe that Garrett Wilson is right up there with, where all the stock, where he's going right now as a top 10 wide receiver. He showed that last year with absolute garbage at quarterback for most of the season. So, sky high potential there. What I thought was interesting, Shawn, with your projections, though, is that you're really you think the arrival of Aaron Rodgers is going to do great things for Corey Davis. So I was just wondering if you could kind of, share what you're thinking with Davis. And obviously he's healthy now. So you like his ability to step up and be a really, really nice sleeper.
Yeah, he's, when he really came on, you thought he was going to be, one of those 100 catch guys and, 1,300 yards, score touchdowns, and he really never got there. And he kind of was in a phase where he made some big plays and, the short stuff he didn't get there, but he still, showed enough where he could be a 60, 900 and, potentially get 1,000 yards. The last year hurt, upgrading quarterback, Lazard's a pretty good player, but to me, Lazard's, he's played with Rodgers and he played better last year, but he hasn't got to a higher ceiling. So I think Davis has more talent. Can he get that stuff over the first, 10 or 15 yards and get the, stuff to push higher than 60 catches? I'm not sure, but I think he has the talent to, and I think Rodgers being, pretty accurate quarterback and him having size, I think he's going to kind of like him. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay healthy and, stick one of those years that we thought he would have like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, some intriguing depth on the Jets. Corey Davis, Allen Lazard, Mecole Hardman all kind of have had their moments in the NFL. Randall Cobb, obviously, he's just there to hang out and have dinner, I think, with Aaron Rodgers after the game. So Tyler Conklin, the number one tight end here on the Jets, he's been intriguing. I've been taking him late in draft as part of stacks and bringbacks and stuff like that. You have him down for 549 yards, Shawn, and five touchdowns. Not horrible numbers for a tight end, but not great numbers either. Is this just kind of a guy that you're just like, meh, he's just another tight end?
I think he's gotten better and he's outperformed what most people thought over the last couple of years, and I think having Rodgers will help him for sure. And Rodgers, tight ends haven't been that great over in Green Bay the last couple of years, so they did draft some this year though. When he's gone, but he will. He's going to be active and he's going to have the games where he scores a couple touchdowns and he's going to be sneaky. And, it's just a matter of, last year the Jets threw the ball 22% of the time to the tight end, and I have him at 17 with a change of personnel, more going to the wide receiver. But, can some of that shift back, or, will Rodgers throw more balls? Jody has him throwing less passes, so his projection is probably a little lower than mine. But it ultimately, will the Jets throw the ball 600 times, 550, or even beat any of those numbers? That's going to be the interesting factor, especially for the tight ends or even the running backs. Yeah.
Jody, you have any other opinions about the tight ends there for New York? You're kind of avoiding them. They're just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, if any of them's going to step it, will be Conklin, and he's basically free at the end of drafts. But there's not a ton of upside there other than the freak dozen touchdown season we saw out of Green Bay a couple of years ago. Like Shawn just said, it's a position that he's kind of ignored lately. So there's some potential there, but like I said, it's nothing. It's nothing for anyone to target until the very late at the draft. If you're just taking a tight end streaming approach, you can take some shots on him late, but you'd have to have a pretty big roster to even bother doing that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so don't forget, guys, also like the show, follow the show. This is probably going to be one of your last chances here to get into this drawing here. Put me in, coach, put that in the chat, and have your chance to win a super flex bowl team tonight drafting. Those are like honestly the funnest I'm having drafting in all of the formats this year. On any of the sites is the Superflex Bowl. I just love the way the players are dropping, and I'm able to build rosters. And I'm seeing in the chat, Scott, 78 more sleeps until Vegas, says Sean Cruising in the chat. That gets me fired up. I'm like, I wanted to stop the show and just talk about that. Vegas coming up. Speaking of that, FFWC main event drafts in Vegas will be held. Some of them, I think Thursday and Friday, will be held at the MGM Top Golf, which is awesome. You get done drafting, go hit a bucket of balls, have a couple of pops, and hang out. It's going to be a really, really good time. I'm excited. Jody, are you making it to Vegas this year? Or you have too much work to do?
Yeah, it'll probably be. I mean, we'll see if I can't squeeze it in, but as of right now, I'm still on the fence on it.
Shawn, you got a big bowling tournament you're going to be chasing out there, or what?
No, I went the last couple of years. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to go this year. I like to go. I'd like to go for 10 days, but Vegas is kind of a dangerous town, even though
That's right.
I don't drink and I behave myself. But I've gone for the baseball thing for 20 years in March, and probably football 70% of the time, but not 100% sure. The circuit thing is very intriguing. That to go there, and so just no matter if I can pull it off, and it does put me a day behind in what I'm supposed to do for work and stuff like that for the projections and stuff. So you kind of have to suck it up that week and work a little harder.
Listen, you go back in time 3 hours to get there anyways, so it's like you're getting that time back. You know what I mean? So, but speaking of back in time, New England Patriots love to run the ball. Their coach is still living in the past. But we got them coming up here. Last team with the AFC East will fly through them. Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, the quarterbacks. You've got Mac Jones as the outright starter there. Probably what's going to happen. Didn't have a great year last year. They're bringing a new offensive coordinator. How do you feel about Mac Jones, Shawn?
think that he's a better player than he was last year for sure. The fans definitely turned on him. Maybe he didn't handle it as well either. I'm not sure that, Smith Schuster is, he played with Patrick Mahomes last year, and if he can't get it done with Patrick Mahomes, and I had him last year, and I thought he would do something. So is he just really Jacoby Myers? I think they're almost identical in age. And Smith Schuster. So I think the key is to, the receiving core. Is there enough there? Will he try the ball? And they're really kind of a defensive. They want, pretty good defense, so they want to slow it down. So they have a coach. Jones is a pretty good player. I'm not confident he has enough elite options to be a fantasy factor, but he will have some games, for matchup value. And I'm from New England, but it's just he's just basically league average, QB2 right now.
Completely agree, Jody.
Yep, set up to fail last year. I don't know who didn't see that coming. A failed head coach with a defensive background calling offensive plays. I think that was set up to be a disaster, and it ended exactly like we thought. Hopefully they can, Bill O'Brien will come in and add some credibility to the offense. I think he did a decent job with Alabama, and he actually did a decent job here in Houston at first until he grew power hungry and decided he could be an excellent GM too. Overall, he was decent at scheming and trying to put players in position to succeed. I think I'm hoping that Bill Belichick approaches this with a clean slate and gives Mac Jones a chance to step up and reclaim the starting job, because you have to be concerned with the way Bailey Zappi played last year, that it felt like they were almost going to get to the point where they were just going to go with him moving forward. And I think that's still in the realm of possibilities of what could happen. But I agree with Shawn. Mac Jones is just a run-of-the-mill NFL quarterback. He can put up competent fantasy numbers from week to week, but he's not someone you want to rely on as anything other than a lesser QB2 in a super flex format. He's a guy like in your typical redraft league of 16 roster spots you don't draft. He's just going to be on the waiver wire, and you pick him up when you're Jalen Hurts or Justin Herbert's on bye, and they're playing the Dolphins or somebody with a friendly defense, and you hope you can get competent numbers that week. Overall, I'm optimistic that he can bounce back a little bit, because overall I kind of like him as a player, but for fantasy purposes, nothing to get too excited about.
Yeah, someone I am excited about is Rhamondre Stevenson. I think he's a very talented back. Right now he's running as RB9 over at the FFWC mid stakes full-time fantasy championship. I think he could even be as high as RB5, I think, this season. Love him there. I don't think they're going to use two backs. I know we have James Robinson in here, but I think he's gone. We got to pull him out of those projections and put nobody in there, because that'd be interesting to see what they're going to do with what it's going to happen to him. I think injuries kind of derailed his career. But what do you think about Rhamondre Stevenson, Shawn?
Yeah, he was really kind of a good mid-season player last year in the fantasy. He was getting the touches, getting catches and doing stuff. But late in the year, he kind of let fantasy teams down. I think I had him on a ton of teams last year. That game, I think on Monday night against Miami, got knocked out early in the game, and I think that probably cost me thousands of dollars, because if he gets like 2 or 6 points, I would have advanced, especially in some of the formats, to the next round of the championship round or the playoffs. So it was kind of devastating. So, he can score touchdowns. He can catch passes. Pretty physical runner. Had the unfortunate, play last year where he, fumbled late in one of the, I think it was it against the Raiders in close there? Felt bad for the guy, but played really hard in that game. And so I think he's really talented, 3-down player. And, without, James Robinson wasn't much, but he's done it before. But somebody will step up there. So he doesn't really have somebody, breathing down his neck to take a lot of touches away from him. So he will be interesting, because, like you said, he'll probably get, definitely a bump of, 10 or 15% or more early down touches from what I have right on the early projections.
Yeah, you said it, Shawn. You said he's going to get the catches and the targets and the goal line work. And the touchdowns. That's all we want out of our running backs, right? We want targets and touchdowns. Targets are worth almost 3 times as much as a carry. A target is worth almost 3 times as much as a carry. So give me the targets, give me the touchdowns, and everything else, who cares about? But Rhamondre Stevenson's going to get that too. Jody, what do you think?
I have him projected at 94 targets, so you'll be happy to hear that. Comes in at 1,520 total yards. In my particular number, 75 grabs, 8.7 total touchdowns. So overall, he's my RB8. I like him just fine. If anyone steps in to be even kind of a small factor outside of him, I'd say the early lead there would be Pierre Strong. But this feels like Rhamondre Stevenson's backfield, and if anything, this will be the closest we've seen to the Patriots using kind of a bell cow three down back in quite a while.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love Pierre Strong's talent. He moves up the pecking order with James Robinson leaving, and so I do think he has that explosive nature to him. But I do think he's going to be also a handcuff back, and I think your projections kind of reflect that, right, Shawn?
Yeah, I think Jody's almost like 1,500 yards. Didn't have as many catches. Maybe probably didn't have as many throws. Maybe, I don't know. He just maybe he's got the running back. Last year that I'm right on the number. They had 98 completions about last year, 20 or they threw the running back. The running back completions were 27%. I have the same number this year. So, but to get, would you say 94 targets? So he probably in the 60. Would you say 75 catches?
Mm-hmm.
His catch rate would have to go up a little bit, but he is going to be active, and he does have the full season with not much competition, especially in the receiving game. James Robinson I had for 30, so those got to go somewhere.
Did you say 75 catches, Jody, or 75 targets?
Receptions.
He said 94.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, 94 targets.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, no, that's good stuff for sure. I'm super high on Rhamondre. I love that. But I get the numbers there too. Moving on to the receivers, it's just kind of a pathetic group of receivers. You talked about it earlier, Shawn. Juju Smith-Schuster. He was wide receiver 18 in points per game before he went down, kind of injured for a while. So he was a wide receiver 2. It was slightly higher than where he was being drafted. I was definitely overweight on Juju last year, thinking the same thing. Like, man, if he can't do it with Mahomes, he can't do it anywhere. And so I'm going to keep that kind of mantra going this year. I'm off of Juju. I'm off of this passing game. But does New England have an average passing volume, or they're probably pretty low, right?
I haven't read about league average at 30, 35 completions a game. Actually, I mean, I'll tell you right now. Last year, New England
They actually ranked 17th in offense last year. As bad as the play calling and things worked out overall last year, I think it was kind of surprising for me to see that they were 17th in overall offense.
Yeah, they averaged like 31.76 pass attempts last year. I have them at 33, so I'm a little bit higher. But the completion rate isn't as high though.
Yeah, and some of that too might have to do with them being in losing game scripts. And listen, Miami, high-powered offense. Jets, much better offense and a really good defense. Bills, high-powered offense, good defense. I mean, I think the Patriots are going to have to throw, again, a bunch this year. So even if they want to run, I think they're going to have to throw. I
said Buffalo didn't have a good defense. So
who's that?
Are you a Buffalo fan?
I am. Okay. No.
They're regressing a little bit. They don't have star power.
No,
they have risk against the run up front. I don't know, but
they're getting stale.
Just
the Bills roster.
I did those
getting stale.
I did their research on May 4th, so I mean, I've done so many of these teams. I have to cycle back and remember all this. That's why I take notes, and I'm only writing this stuff for my personal notes. Not really care if anybody reads it.
Yeah, there you go. But you do have Juju for 74 catches, 876 yards and six touchdowns. That could be a wide receiver 3. And this is a team you can stack very cheaply. Mac Jones is almost free. Juju you get a little later on. Talk to me about Kayshon Boutte. Are you a Boutte fan?
I am. I kind of liked what he brought to the table. I thought he was a very interesting receiver. I put him as the wide receiver 2, just to show that I liked him. But I think there could be a lot more there if he can develop. They need somebody to step up, and maybe people think Thornton's going to be the guy, but I liked his overall game, and I think that, he might be a good fit for Mac Jones this year.
When I see, I don't know the numbers now but when I see Kayshon Boutte, I feel like I just see Laquan Treadwell. I don't know why. I feel like he's a little too slow. Not long enough, not fast enough. I just feel like those are the vibes that I get from him. Jody, are you in or out on Keyshawn Butte?
Well, I mean, he slipped to the 6th round. So if you're asking me if I'm in or out, I'm going to say out. That's disconcerting. He was a little smaller than I thought. I mean, I love LSU receivers, and he put up some big plays, but 2nd percentile burst score, 6th percentile catch radius. He had 7 drops last year. I mean, there's some red flags here, not to mention the Patriots have no clue how to draft and or develop wide receivers. I mean, look back, Bethel Johnson, Chad Jackson, Aaron Dobson, N'Keal Harry. I mean, the list goes on and on. That said, he's just a 6th round prospect. So I don't think, we're expecting too much. And, this is, like Shawn said, at best, this is a, average to slightly below average offense. But, at this point, like in redraft, whatnot, by sliding into the 6th round, there's not a lot of potential there. So I could easily see him step up and be second on this team in targets. But, he's not someone I'm targeting. What's interesting about Juju Smith-Schuster is he really an upgrade over Jacoby Myers? I don't know. What's kind of funny is Shawn mentioned that they're of a similar age. If I'm not mistaken, they pretty much signed the exact same contracts with their new team. So it ended up being kind of humorous to me.
Yeah. And I think Shawn, when he's doing these numbers, he's like, hey, someone's got to be second on the team in targets for receivers. Let's try this rookie here. But Tyquan Thornton, you mentioned him earlier, Shawn. Like, I like that explosiveness. I think he is something that they need. They need an explosive receiver. Again, not a guy that I love, but in best ball drafts, I'll take him with like my last pick, and maybe he pops. Any more on the receivers, Shawn?
No, the rest of them are, obviously Thornton can improve, but Parker is what he is, and Kendrick Bourne, I mean, can block a little bit. Didn't get a chance last year. Maybe he's probably could pop up there and be the wide receiver 3 out of the gate. But I didn't give him much respect. I mean, it's pretty low for him considering he's had 30 or 40 catches the last few years.
Yeah.
But But like I said, that some of the stuff will in the 2nd and 3rd version of these as we go along, when we get more camp news and what's going on and reports of players, they're going to change a lot. So these are just starting points, and kind of you try to be neutral on some of this, but also express some opinion on some players.
Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki, these two might be the leading receivers, or maybe Rhamondre Stevenson on the team this year. This is an intriguing tight end kind of stack here. I think they're both talented. They've used kind of tight ends before. They kind of pioneered it with Gesicki and the late great Aaron Hernandez. They try to do a little bit in recent years too. So Henry and Gesicki, you have Henry for 43 catches, Gesicki for 40, 4 touchdowns to 3 touchdowns. Neither of them over 530 receiving yards. Is this a situation where you think they're just kind of eat each other's food here?
Yeah, they're going to get in Gesicki, the big, last year Miami, the blocking was a really big factor, and they almost like phased him up, and maybe that's why they need the blocking, because Tua was getting hit, so much. But I think New England's obviously aware that he, of his what he can do, but they're willing, they want him as a pass catching tight end that can, do a little more damage downfield. So he'll make, have a chance to make some big plays. He's had a pretty good resume, and I think he's a better player than he's had. But the thing that with him in the past, he's been, a big game, disappear for 2 games, steady game, and then, another big game. So he's been a really tough, difficult player to manage in the fantasy market. Hunter Henry's, been a little more steady. Probably could trust him a little bit more, but, will that team, dictate a lot more balls going to the tight end position? I'm not sure. I'm kind of neutral. They were 19% of the completion last year. I'm at 23. I downgraded their wide receivers because the questions at behind Juju. So it's an interesting team, but the tight ends, either one of them, they could actually finish it, probably behind Juju for catches, and probably Rhamondre is actually probably going to be the 2nd most on the team, behind Juju. But Jody said he might get more. 75 puts him ahead of Juju by 1.
Love that. I would love that. Awesome. Well done tonight, guys. I just have one final question here for you. This is from Ray. Do we think DeAndre Hopkins is going to sign with an AFC East team? I will let you go first, Jody. What do you think?
No. they're talking about him going to New England, but do we want him going to New England? Because I just don't see the volume that could sustain what we want to see from fantasy fans out of DeAndre Hopkins if he went there. It might make sense for him to go to the Jets, but again, since Aaron Rodgers has brought all his buddies in there, I don't know that that's even a priority for them. The Bills would be, the best from a fantasy perspective because DeAndre Hopkins is, to me, it's a significant upgrade over Gabriel Davis, and it would let Davis, as the third receiving option and maybe even fourth if you look past the tight ends. That might be a more ideal role for him, but money seems like it's a factor to Hopkins as it should be, and he can probably find a better opportunity and a better paying job somewhere else.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think the Titans probably be a better. I mean, people laugh at it, but it's like they have great coaching. They have a much better chance to win their division than the Patriots do. I mean, especially if they had him. So we'll see about that. Shawn, do you think he'll land in the AFC East?
I think like you said, he wants to get paid, but ultimately somebody, New England or some lesser team, they're not going to pay him. So in the end, you might as well go to Buffalo or Kansas City, and why not just take a minimal contract, prove yourself again, win a Super Bowl, and he would definitely help Kansas City. I don't know why they wouldn't. He should just be parking in the parking lot catching balls, waiting for it. But right. Buffalo or something. But it's just he's a really good receiver, great hands, works the short area of the field. I mean, he makes a lot of sense, and he really just didn't click in Arizona. With Murray running to one side of the field and cutting it off, and it just wasn't there. So I think he has to go to a contender, and the money, he wants it, but when it gets down closer to the season, he'll settle for the winning team.
Yep, I think the Bills would want him, but I think they want him to take a pay cut, and I don't think he's going to do that. So great show again tonight, guys. Everybody jump into the Discord to see the winner of our drawing here for the Superflex Bowl tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us. And again, we're going to be here every week for the next 7 or 8 weeks, doing all the divisions, AFC East, NFC. I don't think we've decided which one we're doing next week. We'll keep that a secret. But these are all these premium outlooks, guys, are behind the paywall. So tuning into this show kind of gives you a sneak peek behind the paywall there. So it's been a great night. Shawn, you were excellent. Jody, awesome as usual. So for Adam, Jody, and Shawn at the Full Time Fantasy Podcast, see you next week and have a good one.